This is Mile High.
We have to do it better in order to move people along.
Up, down, inside out.
If you get your mind right, it is not. It is a receiver of thought. Because love is my first technique.
It's now time for the show.
Welcome to another episode of the Mile High podcast. This is your host, Daniel Knowles, and you are in for a stellar episode. Let me tell you that. Before I get into introducing our guest, we are in mid-September, and we are just recording this about 10 days away before the early registration deadline for Mile High, which is September 30th. The event is August 16th to 19th next year, 2018. We're coming off an incredible weekend. We're going to be talking about money today. And in terms of talking about money, we raised upwards of $55,000 at Mile High for the Foundation for Vertebral Subluxation Research, which we are very excited about all the people that were in attendance and contributed. And why this is important is if you are going to have impact, you have to have resources. And that's one of the things that we want to see come out of Mile High is more chiropractors have more resources, being resourceful, and making impact. So join us next year. And if you're resourceful, you're going to register before the early registration savings, because it will not be 50% off the ticket price. Again, I promise you that. So you want to do that in September, commit and lock in. Today, I am with one of my new favorite people. We really just got to meet recently at the Berkshires Festival. I call it the festival because I think it's a lot of fun, which is Dr. Daniel Bai, and we have New York in common in our roots. And he is the genius behind Clothes for Chiro, and people are just loving your material. Welcome to the Mile High episode, Dr. Daniel Bai.
Hey, Danny. Great to see you. Before you get started, I just want to give a shout out to you, brother. You're doing a great job over there at Mile High. I hear a lot of things behind the scenes, and everyone still is talking about the latest Mile High. So great job to you and your team. Thank you.
Well, thank you for saying that. And another thing we share in common is a name. So, people that name Daniel tend to do great things. So there we go.
That's right. Well, I think our name biblically means God is our judge. So We're judged by the highest standards of standards.
Exactly.
So I think that keeps us pretty well in check.
And you sent me some information as we were preparing for this episode and to bring some solid content for people, because money, financial pitfalls is a big problem for doctors of chiropractic, sadly, and it should not be, because you have the most powerful healing art in your hands. And if you can't make money, be profitable, and have resources doing it, the challenge is not with the healing art, right? The challenge is with something you're doing. So what are your thoughts on opening up just with that thought?
All right. Well, thanks for opening up with that. One of the things I love about talking to guys like you, Danny, and some of the other the new friends, and I feel like I'm coming back home. All my East Coasters, is like someone like you, Danny. You have a very healthy relationship with money, and I don't believe our profession as a whole has a very healthy relationship with money. I think that, I don't know where it comes from. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not going to sit here and try to figure this out, nitpick it apart. I just know right now we don't have a very good relationship with money. You bring up resources, which is a really good point. I find in our profession right now is that there's a huge divide, a philosophical contradiction that exists in our profession every single day on this concept of service and this concept of building resources for our businesses. And I hope in our short time that we have here today, maybe, just maybe, we can create a little bridge in that chasm between the contradiction between service and prosperity and profitability. Because you and I both know, not only as philosophically aligned chiropractors, we are also business people, and we know that one needs to lead to the other, and the other needs to lead to the other, and there's the only way that can happen. So my goal and my purpose in this, my walk of life, for my profession, is if I could leave an indelible mark in my profession for every chiropractor to understand and have a healthy relationship of where resources, money in this case, fits in to our level of service and certainty. And if we can somehow put that in the same pot and mix it all up and make this thing called chiropractic as glorious as it should absolutely be, I think I would consider my life a success. So that's what I got to open with.
Well, let's get deep into that. Why do docs have such a poor relationship with money? Do you have a sense of what the underlying problem is?
Yeah, I think that, the cliche response is, oh, it's because the doctor doesn't value what he does or what she does. And I've heard that so long. It's so cliche and it's a myth. It doesn't have anything to do with that. If anything, chiropractors value and understand chiropractic too much. And I'll go over that later in the call if I may. But right now, I believe that the disconnect between the doctor and their relationship with money really has to do with their ability to communicate the value of chiropractic from the perspective of the prospect, which is your patient, okay? And then, and since we have a problem delivering that message on a clear, concise, direct method, that our prospects essentially are rejecting the chiropractic message, hence the chiropractor in the process. So I think that's where it starts. And then, of course, as you know, Danny, what happens is one leads to the other. Then we start getting into this rut. Then we start second guessing. We self-doubt. And the other problem in this profession, which is why I love things like Mile High, is that most chiropractors are living on an island all by themselves. They do not participate in community. And that in itself leads to more isolation and ultimately burnout. And ultimately, I think you know the rest of the story.
Well, yeah, you need connection. We're a profession that's based on the value of connection, especially internally, obviously. And if you then aren't connected with other people, if you don't have a chiropractic tribe, it really impacts you negatively. And I love this quote that you shared: walk left side safe, walk right side safe, walk middle, sooner or later squish like grape. Like Mr. Miyagi. I love it. By the way, you know that's back.
Oh, I totally know it's back. Mr. Miyagi, my hero, man. There's a lot of great life lessons in that one.
Yeah, they have the Karate Kid back. It's pretty awesome.
That's right. Hey, but check it out. That quote really has to do with the fact that either you do or you don't, and there's no middle ground. And what we're talking about here is your ability or your conviction to communicate what you do. It's either all in or all out. There's no middle ground in that. And I think that a lot of docs, they may be great with their technique. Awesome. They're great with their putting together offices and picking out furniture color and stuff like that. But what happens is I feel like once a patient gets in front of you one-on-one initially, okay, which is essentially where the rubber meets the road, we kind of don't know what we're doing. Mm-hmm. We wing every single time, do ABC for the first guy, XYZ for the other guy, exclamation point, at symbol, period for this woman. And we don't have a predictable system for us to get a patient that knows nothing about chiropractic or what it stands for, what it does. And it does not do anything for them to get them up the ladder for them to say, you know what, this is a solution to my problem. Yes, I want it, and here's my money.
And thus why you probably got into teaching people how to close. And let's talk about that. So how did you end up teaching people how to close, and what does close mean?
Okay, well, a close is a business term, okay? It's a business term that says it's the close of a business transaction where a customer and a salesperson agree and they exchange and they move on. Now, there's another, philosophically though, I believe for upfront from a day one, day two, we must close that in order for us to open up the relationship.
Right.
Let me explain that for a second. See, our profession wants our communities to own chiropractic before they've ever had any chance to actually experience chiropractic. So in the first 2 days of meeting a new patient, we want them to understand friggin', Stevenson's 33. We want them to understand that the power that made the body heals the body. that this paradigm of healthcare that we know is true, and it is true, I don't care what anyone says, we want them to understand that in the first 2 visits. I don't know about you, Danny, but don't we know some even colleagues that after 20 years of practice still don't get it?
Absolutely. And to tell you the truth, it took me years to understand it, and I had a chiropractic family, and I'm still growing in that understanding. It's like a chasm, and you're laying down a bridge for them to cross and getting bit by bit across, rather than thinking that they're going to just jump across.
Yes, exactly. And that's problem number 1 right there. And that happens because we're not in the perspective of our patients. We're in the perspective of chiropractic. Before, I told you, one of the problems that we have in our profession, and I hate talking about problems, but this is a really big problem, is that we do not, we want our patients to own chiropractic, like I said. But frankly, if we don't bite-size and give them the bite-sized pieces for them to grow with it initially, we're never going to get them to a point where they understand chiropractic fully. What actually happens is they get turned off by it because it's so opposite of what their normal thinking is, you know? And the more into chiropractic we are, the more guilty of that we are. You know? It's the enthusiastic, doing a cartwheel into the exam room, you know, spewing out chiropractic one-liners. You know, it's like, and I get a bad rap. People are like, oh, you're so anti-chiropractic philosophy. No, excuse you. No, I'm very much into it, but I know what my patients are into. I'm not going to give them something they don't want. You sell them what they want while educating them what they could have. And the process is an evolution. Just like you and I, Dan, we are evolving in our understanding of chiropractic even today. So why are not our patients not going to follow the same rules?
Exactly. Now, you know, the other thing is sales. A lot of people say, oh, there's no selling in healthcare, or sales is a, you know, dirty word or something like that. But at the same time, if you don't create a transaction where the person exchanges for your services, they're not going to get your services. They're not going to get the benefit of actually having a healthier functioning spine and nervous system. And if you want them to have that gift, there has to be some way that you create an exchange process that's reproducible. Otherwise, you're going to be very frustrated in practice. And I've been there. I had many times, you know, first starting out where I lived that so I'm not like immune to it, and I'm sure you're not immune to it. For example, let's actually, before you ask that question about like why sales is important, did you have a time where like this was breaking you down because you were not doing it well?
Are you kidding me? Yeah, this is how it happened.
Right.
I mean, I came close to getting out of the profession, Danny.
Right.
I mean, there came a point where I cried myself back home on my 2-hour journey from Upper East Side of Manhattan to Bayside, Queens. I know you know the area.
Yep.
And like it was February, it was cold, and I had scheduled about 100 and some odd new patients in my office. I hit the chiropractic marketing load, did a talk for the Archdiocese in New York City, which you know they're huge. Mm-hmm. And over a course of 3 or 4 weeks, you know, like 9 to 10 of them were the only ones that said yes. So that was a single-digit close ratio or conversion rate, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And that absolutely crushed me. And I just felt like at that point, you know, either I suck or chiropractic is not all it's cracked up to be, or both. Either way, it wasn't going to happen for me. And I came really close to getting out of the profession at that point.
And while we're on that note, let me share something to echo that, which was when I first practiced in South Carolina. I had just graduated from Spartanburg, and, you know, being a New Yorker, living in South Carolina is not easy. So,
yeah, you're just another New York City shyster down in the South.
Yeah, I went from Greenwich Village to Spartanburg. It was not easy.
Oh, right.
But anyway, so I'm practicing, just graduated, and I thought if I just tell people universal intelligence, innate intelligence, and subluxation, they would be like, this is brilliant. We've got to see you. How much is it? And that, you know, after a couple months, that is not what happened. And I was literally at a point of in my office in tears. So I know what that's like. And I remember, because my parents are chiropractors, calling my dad and being like, what is going on? And being crushed. And he said something to me, and this will get to the sales question. He said something to me that you are going to love, which he asked me, who should be the wealthiest doctor in Spartanburg? Now, being not so smart and resourceful at that point, I said, well, I don't know. Who should be? He was like, Danny, you should be. I was like, oh, really? Why? He's like, because your service is the most valuable one in the area. And it was like, that did not even get through my skull that I thought he was asking me, there's some other doctor there was supposed to be.
Right.
And I remember thinking at that point, okay, all right, I have to get my mindset that I'm going to be the wealthiest doctor in Spartanburg, and people don't go out into practice thinking that, but if your service is valuable, you should be, receiving well paid for that. So why is sales important? Why is it, to so many people, a dirty word?
Well, it's a dirty word because in mass media and in the culture, anytime we talk about sales, it's always attached to a negative thing, like the used car salesman with the big, plaid jacket, fat tie that's trying to sell you a lemon and try to charge you premium for it, or people who sell bad things, like Walter White selling methamphetamine. So these are the things that sales is usually attached with because it gets press. And it's fodder and it's gossipy. But in the beginning of time, let me bring you back to the prehistoric days of man, when cavemen were communing together. Now that they're kind of meet one caveman to caveman. So and I have a club, and he has a fish, and so I want the fish, and you want my club. From that moment, they had to figure out a way to evenly trade this, and each person be able to communicate how their product or service is of value to the other person for that service or that exchange of service to be successful. That was the inception of sales, and it's been around since the very beginning. So from a definitive standpoint, Danny, sales has always been there, okay? We've never lived in a world where it wasn't there. I know you have kids, and I have a 5-year-old at home. You want to talk about a salesperson? That kid can sell. I'm telling you, man. And he is absolutely so persistent. Doesn't take no for an answer. Always coming up with different ways to get his way. And so we've learned that from a really young age. The reason is a requirement is because we are in business. And any business, and by the way, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, you know what, I don't care what any of you guys say, I'm not a salesperson. Well, I got to tell you something. If you have one practice member in your practice, you're a salesperson. You convince that person that coming to you was a good idea, and you also convince that person that paying you was a good idea, and you also convince that person that coming to you is going to help with their health or be a solution to their problem. You've sold them, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. You want to call it something else? I don't care. Call it communicating. I don't really care what to call it. I just call, a quacking duck a quack, okay? Or a duck. I don't try to sugarcoat what it is. Sales is sales. A transaction is a transaction, okay? From a business perspective, and it is absolutely a requirement in your businesses.
Absolutely. And, the sad thing is that people struggle with this. And I see way too many people that are great chiropractors, great adjusters, have such a gift, understand the philosophy, and then they end up like bartending or something. I mean, yes. I've seen that more than the profession wants to admit, or defaulting on their student loans shows another area of lack of integrity or something like that. So, yes. How do we avoid that? Right? How do we take the icky out of sales, and how do we not come off salesy? Because that's one thing people hate hearing. Oh, I didn't like your office because it was so salesy or something like that.
Right. Let's reposition that just a little bit.
Right.
If you don't, what you don't want to come off as is not authentic. That's right. What people say is salesy. You know who the people who will get called salesy the most? The ill-prepared. If you're going into a day one, day two, or your new patient process, however you want to call it, and you're ill prepared, the odds of you being called salesy are exponentially higher than you going in there prepared with doing what you know that you have to do. So the panacea to this is preparation. Okay, and why reinvent the wheel? People have been studying sales since the inception of modern commerce. Chiropractic is brand new in terms of sales. Sales has been around forever, okay? And chiropractic is this old, right? So why are we trying to reinvent the wheel and trying to, figure out ways to make people say or help people say yes to chiropractic when it's already been done In other industries, all we needed to do is apply a system to our profession. Quite simple. So and obviously that's what we teach in our day 1, day 2 master classes is we just give you the algorithm, you know. Now it's an art form, obviously, it's communications, but we all got to start with some type of archetype, you know, like A, B, then C. That's how I learn, and that's how we teach it. Because I think if you get the archetype down and you get it down well enough, then you could infuse your own personality and your own flair to it, okay? Because no two people will do it the same way, but we all have to start somewhere. And the second thing is this. If we are consistent in the system of how we sell, what actually happens is, and I know you know this, Danny, is that when you have a system that is reproducible, the stress goes down exponentially in your practice. Yeah. You know, it's like you kind of know what to expect. You know, it's like, oh, I've seen this before, no biggie, and get it done, be done with it, and then get on with your life. So, okay, and then one more thing about of how to get the ickiness out of it is it's more of a headspace thing. You know, we were consumers before we were ever selling anything, right? So what happens is works. And so we spend gobs and gobs of money. We read a ton of books to have some expert tell us how we buy stuff. So when I go to Target, what makes me buy that thing? So every time I go buy something, every time I pull out my wallet to do something, I stop and I go, holy cow, I bought this because of X, Y, and Z. And I try to make logical sense of it. And the more you do that, the better you'll get in terms of getting into the perspective of your prospects, because your patients are going through the same process just like you did buying something over at Bed Bath & Beyond. And if you start there, just naturally what will actually happen is your communication with your patients will evolve, okay? And the one thing that you'll stop doing is putting chiropractic at the forefront of the conversation, because chiropractic is the tool from the perspective of the prospect. What's important is what that person wants out of this relationship. It's a very selfish endeavor, but that's exactly why they're in front of you.
So then what happens is, how do you bridge the gap, or is there a gap? Should there not be a gap in terms of the relationship between sales and chiropractic philosophy?
Yeah, there's a connection, but it doesn't happen on the first day or for the second day. What happens on the first day and second day, relationship that actually is bonding, is the relationship between the patient and seeing you as a solution to the problem. You're essentially a tool. I mean, you're not tool, but you're a tool. You're a means to an end for the patient. That's the relationship that starts first. Now, once they're in and they're in the system and you're adjusting them, that's when the relationship builds between the provider and the receiver. That happens for a while. Then what actually happens is there's a relationship that builds between the receiver, which is your patient, and the provider, and how he provides the service, which is chiropractic. Chiropractic is last in line to be introduced, because all these things are a prerequisite. It's the stuff that primes the pump to a point where your patients will say, you know what? I've had a patient just the other day, 4 or 5 months in, okay? And she goes to me, so how exactly does this work? Like I get like the sinus issues. I've been dealing it for 20 years, and automatically after the first 3 visits, they're gone. And I just realized they're gone. How does that work? You know what they're saying? They're opting in for the chiropractic story right there. You know what I do? I give it to them. I don't browbeat them up front with it. I wait until the relationships were established, and then they say, I want more. I want to know, how does this work? Oh, now this relates to my family and friends, etc. So that's the bridging. That's the bringing those two things together, and it's time, and it's investing in a relationship, just like all of you have invested in relationships with people in your lives, like Danny, you and your wife, right? I mean, you invested in the relationship up front. When you first met her, did she say? Well, she might have. I don't know. Did she say, you know what? I'm sold. I'm marrying him tomorrow, right? And you say the same thing. I don't know. Probably not. Maybe you did. But there was an investment of a relationship that built and it evolved. And then it became, okay, the next step is let's get married. Great. Oh, next, let's have some kids. Great. Next thing, let's move to Colorado. Great. You know, all these things happen and they evolve over the course of time. That is the archetype of a relationship. It's no different than the relationship between us and our patients.
And I have to say this, by the way, because you mentioned if you have one person in your practice, you're selling. If you've dated anyone, you're selling.
Yes.
Yes. You can't date someone without selling yourself. You know, you just don't think of it that way. You know, you got to sell them on the idea of going to a movie with you or whatever it is, and so on. So anyway, I want to ask you another question, but before I ask you this really impactful question, I want to remind people how they can get connected with you, okay, which is www.closeforchiro.com, and you have a program coming up shortly, again, when I'm not around, and I keep watching your schedule, and I know those programs fill up quick, so when's the next one?
November 10th and 11th in Chicago.
In Chicago. So you want to get on that right away. I know the last time my good friend Liam Schubel was there, he just raved about it and revolutionized things for him. So if you see someone who's working with 20 different clinics that find something that can make a big shift in their office, you know, you want to know what it is. Right?
Totally.
So,
and talk about another man who has a very good relationship with money. It is absolutely Liam, and he's brilliant with that. So thank you for that.
Success leaves clues, right? So, and so now on that, what are some keys that people could walk away from this podcast in terms of closing that would help them?
Sure. Right off the bat is, other than the headspace, I think we covered a lot of that already. You know, up front, when you're doing a consult with a new patient, you shall have no other agenda than asking questions from the patient that gets to the bottom of why they're there. So it's all about them. Now, and the reason I say this, it seems pretty obvious and logical, but I was trained to never talk about symptoms, that doing so is against the chiropractic philosophy. And I was all spizzed up. You know, I went to Live, Home of the Falling Keys. I saw, you know, I hugged Sid once. That was an experience. So, you know.
And the business hand should not know what the healing hand's doing, right?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yes, all that stuff. So, you know, I'm a product of DE, you know, and anyway, so a lot of my coaching and my mentoring was about don't talk about symptoms, etc. And even BJ Palmer says symptoms sell. And he even knew back then that that's what drives a patient to an action step. So do not discount that. If they're there for headaches, you should be all over that headaches. Understanding that is the first step to their ultimate understanding of what true chiropractic is, which should be our goal, but it should never be something that is forced upon them, only if they want it. So back to the consult. If Danny comes in, he has headaches, like, well, tell me more about the headaches. Get a history, okay? Kind of like what you do in student clinic. Why does that help? Well, clinically, you might want to know that. But number two, it shows the patient that what's most important to them is also what's most important to you. And that you're not going to inundate them with your agenda. You're interested in their agenda. The other thing that you want to do in a consult is understand this concept that people are not there just to get rid of a headache or neck pain or lower back pain or even indigestion, what have you. They're there because that particular problem is affecting some part of their life negatively. In sales, it's called a pain point. In sales, it's called, I forget, there's so many different words for it. We call it life effect. How is it affecting their lives negatively? And that's what we want to get down to the bottom. So if you can ask questions well enough for your patients to say, you know what, I got to tell you, I'm here because of these headaches, I have missed work for the last 2.5 weeks. And when I do go to work, I'm literally struggling. My boss is on my ass. My wife is nagging at me right now because, you know, I'm not pulling overtime like I should. And on top of that, I can't go see little Johnny's baseball game. If you get someone to that point on a day one, you've done your job.
And that's an important thing. What we've always told people is you've got to talk about their concern, talk about their concern, their health concern, but then you have to find out their concern about their concern.
Yes. Yes. I mean, how many different ways can we express this? And by the way, none of this stuff I came up with myself. Okay, um, it's just a sales basic. Unfortunately, what happens is our agenda, the chiropractic agenda, our ego, our pride, our not wanting to be confrontational, gets in the way of providing this type of communication to a patient up front. That's why in masterclass, some of the things we cover are so obvious, but it's so amazing. I know you teach as well, Danny. So like when those light bulbs go off in the audience, you're like, yeah, man, I got you, because it wasn't really what you thought it was, and all it takes is a day to do that. Especially when you see it, how it's happening, you see how it's done, and more importantly, you know why it's done.
And by the way, I just want to make sure, in the masterclass, is that where you teach people that Danny Knowles is one of the coolest cats in chiropractic? Is that where you do that?
Yes, I even have a T-shirt made.
Okay, good.
And you are one of the coolest cats in chiropractic, Danny.
What about this? That, like, you have to give it away. You have to serve. Serve till you have nothing left. Like, that kind of consciousness that you see so often in chiropractic.
Yeah, and what I say to that is something that I heard quoted to me by Dennis Perman back in 2002 when I was with the Master Circles. I want to give credit where credit is due. On one of their recordings, he was talking about how Gandhi was interviewed and, talk about the epitome of servitude. And someone said, Gandhi, why do you do X, Y, and Z? Why do you give yourself and your soul to humanity? And he goes, I do none of this stuff other than to serve myself. And everyone's like, oh, jaws are dropping. And he continued, he goes, every act of kindness and humanitarian work that I do ultimately feeds me, right? So that's what he said about service. Now, the thing with service in terms of the chiropractic office, it's a little different. We don't really serve that way. We serve that way. We get chiseled because we want to be liked, number one.
Yes.
Right? And number two is that we put it this way. If you really want to serve, and God bless you if you do, why don't you set up a free clinic and then get a job doing something else to pay your bills?
Right.
That should take care of it, okay? But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. We need to serve, and serving does not mean not getting something back from it. Okay, serving in this scenario means that you must get compensated by a resource called revenue in order for you to put that money back into your business so you can serve more and do better. And there's nothing wrong with serving and collecting revenue to serve your own family. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, the best thing you can do for the poor is not to be one of them.
You got that right.
Right. I remember one of the first years we were doing really well in Colorado. At the end of the year, and I looked, I said, wow, we have $5,000 that I could donate, and I donated it to a local soup kitchen just because I was like, we have money to donate, and I was excited about it. And like, that should be the norm in chiropractic.
Yes, and what
the charity is.
Exactly. And the quote that we use is, money puts your values to work. And I got to tell you, chiropractors, we're sweethearts, man. I mean, we're really altruistic beings, all right, in terms of a profession. We got our issues, yes, but ultimately, like, we want to give and we want to serve, and that's who we are as people, generally. And so if you give those people money, and as you know, money is a magnifier, they're going to serve more and do more with the resources that you started off the call with. Because with those resources, it goes right back into serving more and doing good things, donating to charities, and putting the money where your values lie. And chiropractors have generally good values.
Which means then you have to have a healthy relationship with money to fuel those values. Otherwise, you end up in a cycle that you just feel extremely frustrated. And I've seen it, and I know you've seen it.
Yeah, and that's the saddest thing, Danny, is watching good docs with good hands and good hearts close up shop because they're missing this one critical component that you must sell, push, and close this thing called chiropractic till you're blue in the face.
Right.
If you really believe that it is the best thing since sliced bread, and you believe that chiropractic is the best healthcare product in the world, because chiropractic is a lot of lip service. Let's back it up and really do the work to communicate that particular value to our public, and then if we could do that, we got it made.
Right. Right. And you know what you said about being chiseled, I've seen that in doctors, associates, blowing an initial visit, blowing a spinal screening, blowing a talk, blowing a, you know, reviewing results with the person, and they're getting themselves chiseled because of how they're doing it.
Exactly. Right. Remember, we want to be respected, not liked. I think we
Right.
have enough friends
Right.
outside of our practices to consider
Right.
ourselves good people and be loved and liked and all those things.
Right.
And do not get your emotional needs met from your patients
Right.
either.
Yeah.
They're not there for that.
They're there to do they're doing an initial visit in such a way to make sure the person likes them. And
Yes.
I see it so frequently, and it's sad because the person is the new patient is there not for a friend, but to get a service. They're not trying to become your friend. They have their own friends, and they like you, but they don't necessarily like you all that much, right?
Right. Well, you get stuck in what's called a friend zone. And it brings me to a story. When I was in high school, it was a young lady that I was trying to, date, and she comes to me. She goes, my my heart says yes, but my head says no. I'm like, what are you talking about? Pretty much is a nice way of saying, dude, I like you, but that's about it.
Yeah. Right.
You ain't getting anywhere with me.
Right, exactly. Because there's not going to be a transaction happening. So
No, definitely no transaction was happening there, Danny. I'll tell you that much.
Well, thank you so much for taking your time. I know you're going into practice in just a couple hours, and a lot of people think like that you don't practice or that I don't practice, or other people like I'm practicing every day, and I know you are. I don't know every day, but today you are, many days, and most days, whatever your office schedule is, and you're also doing something in your office like this is what you really do, and it's impactful and successful, and there are people under your hands in care, and you want people to be able to do it better so they can have the life that you're having.
Yes,
and help the
and
people that you're having, where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the most enlightening things to be in practice doing this and also teaching my colleagues, because things change so quickly. I mean, even 5 years, how much has the market changed, Danny, in the past 5 years? Forget 10 years. 5 years, things change, and we have to essentially stay on top of that and get with the times.
Well, listen, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you my 2018 schedule so that way you can put your programs around my schedule.
Okay.
So that way I can get to one. And so
you got it. Yeah, you're kidding, but I'm really gonna actually look to do that, because I'll be honest with you. When I got rock stars like Liam Cumming and Scott Garber and Jean-Marc Slack and you, I love seeing how you guys take our stuff and roll with it. It's really, really quite amazing to see how you wield a tool differently than anybody else. So I'm really looking forward to see what you do with it. But I know we got to get you into a seat first.
Well, thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you at the Berkshires, because I will be there and I'll see you there. Is there any final things you want to say to people before we wrap up?
I think we covered it all. I just want to let everyone know that you are absolutely in the best profession ever, because you represent the best healthcare product in the world, period. Let's start there, and then let's tweak out a strategy for you to be able to communicate the value for what you do so that you can get paid what you deserve, because you are that valuable. So that's all I want to say.
And then have this mindset of that you're the wealthiest healthcare provider in your town. That should be something we should all aspire to as chiropractors. A simple goal, big one, and doable, and should be our focus, because it's just a reflection of that we're actually serving and caring for people. And so thank you for joining us on this podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode and all the episodes we do, remember, on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you're listening to this, hit subscribe, become a loyal subscriber. You never want to miss an episode. We have great episodes every single week to help you get great tools and information to impact more lives. And we want to see more people on more tables more often. And also clear your calendar, register before the end of September, or of course, if you're not registering before the end of September, which I don't know why you wouldn't, because if you have a good relationship with money, you don't want to pay full price, so you want to have 50% off. Then you want to do that before September ends and join us August 16th to 19th. Mark that in your calendar, clear it off. nothing else happens that weekend that's as important as Mile High, and it's the program at the highest altitude in Tick. So we look forward to seeing people there, www.milehighcolorado.org. Thank you so much for being with us on this episode, Dr. Daniel Bai. And again, the best chiropractors have the name Daniel. That's my theory.
That's right. Awesome. Hey, Danny, great job. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been an honor.
Excellent. Welcome. And keep changing spines and lives.